Cabinet Secretary for Interior, National Administration, Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen. I submit, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Mumina. Do you want to respond? Do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, while I appreciate the response that has been given, I must state my dissatisfaction as it does not fully address the specific concerns raised. Honorable Speaker, Constitution under Article 153(3) expressly requires Cabinet Secretaries to provide Parliament with full and satisfactory explanation on matters within their mandate. Likewise, Standing Order 44(2)(c) demands that statements sought by members be factual, clear, and comprehensive. Honorable Speaker, the response before us falls short of these requirements, and in the interest of accountability to the House and to the people we represent, I urge that responsible ministry or agency be directed to furnish a more adequate reply. Honorable Speaker, on this matter specifically, because this is not the only abduction case I've reported here, asking for a statement, I think this morning I had another one, of which I know very well the answers will be the same. Next time the chair will be standing there to respond, he will still tell us that the government has no idea where these people are. So, Chair, for this case of Abdullahi Bonso, I'm sad to report to you that because of the depression that the family is undergoing, he recently lost a brother affected by this matter. As I stand here, the mother is sickly due to the depression that has been caused by this case. This Abdullahi Bonso is a husband of three women, father of over 13 children. He was the sole breadwinner. You can imagine the trauma. You can imagine the trouble the family is undergoing. And I want to say here, from the experience we've had in the past with the abduction cases, there's no case the government is not aware. They are fully involved, they are fully aware, and I honestly request the chair to give us factual, clear, and responsible answer on these cases of abduction. You can't always stand here and tell us you have no idea where these people are. Kindly, we are representing people who are expecting factual answers from us, and government should respond to that. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Owen, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I appreciate the response coming from the Honorable Member of Parliament. And my advice, Honorable Speaker, is that sometimes statements, our chairs have no control, so much control on statements. And these statements are generated by cabinet secretaries, and they come to this chamber, and the chairs have to read as they are. And probably the responsibility that is alluded by my lady here may not be on the part of the chair. Chairman Tongoyo is a very good man, and he means well. And he's one of the finest we've ever had as a chair of that committee, one of the finest. And when you have issues, when he has read a statement, probably you may need to dissociate him from the content of the statement. But my advice is that probably the honorable member needs to bring a question instead of requesting a statement. The good thing about a question is that now we can have the cabinet secretary here himself, and we can actually tell him the things that you have said to his face, so that he knows that he needs to be accountable to Parliament. Because sometimes when these responses are brought, probably it's just a junior officer who has done the response. And it comes here and we read it to you, and you think this chairman is just playing ping pong and is not really helping you.
Okay,
but my advice, Honorable Chair, is that she brings a question, and we will force the cabinet secretary to come to this house to actually respond to that. Thank you.
Honorable Tongoyo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think really I'm much in support of what the leader majority has said, because as I earlier said, we all know how, of course, the difference between the statement and the question. The questions, at least you have the opportunity and the privilege of interrogating the CS when he's physically present. Having said this, Madam Speaker, I will still also want to challenge the colleague member here and others that we also stop by making insinuation that any disappearance, any missing person is always must be known by the police officers. It's not true. It's not always true. As actually indicated and well stated in the statement, and Madam Speaker, that the National Police Service remain firmly committed to upholding the Constitution of Kenya and safeguarding the fundamental right of freedom of all citizens, to include never to do abduction. The National Police Service don't do abduction. Criminal does abductions, not the police officers. So, but having said this, if we can rechannel and reframe the statement to a question, maybe the CS will be able to have an opportunity to be more interrogated.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have the response to the question by Honorable Joyce Bensouda, member for Homa Bay County by Education Committee. Vice Chair, already you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I wish to respond to the statement by Honorable Joyce Bensouda on recruitment and deployment of teachers. The question was the procedure used in the recruitment and deployment of teachers to ensure that there's stability and continuity for both the teachers and students. So the key principle driving recruitment and deployment of teachers is that the Commission is an equal opportunity employer that abides by the tenets of the law espoused upon Constitution, TSC Act, and the Employment Act, the National Cohesion and the Integration Act, amongst other pieces of legislation. Two, in accordance with Section 55 of our Code of Regulation, the Commission has developed teacher recruitment policy that governs the recruitment process to ensure that the process is carried out in a lawful manner and within the tenets of rights and freedoms stipulated under the Constitution. The policy outlines the skills and competencies necessary for one to be recruited, and of course a copy is available for your review. The policy is informed by the values and the principles of public service that include fair competition and merit, transparency and accountability, equity, fairness and impartiality, inclusiveness and non-discrimination. Accordingly, the recruitment procedure described below ensures that there is stability and continuity in the teaching sector. The recruitment procedure is as follows. One is the identification of vacancies. The process of teachers' recruitment begins with the identification of vacancies, which will be determined by existing vacancies arising out of teacher shortage or vacancies arising from the teacher once the teacher exists. Two, vacancy distribution. Vacancies are distributed proportionally to counties and sub-counties, ensuring that each region receives a fair share of opportunities based on needs and available positions. The third one is advertisements for recruitment. Once the vacancies have been identified and approved based on the available budget, the demand and supply of teachers and the existing establishments, the Commission advertises for the vacancies in the print media and through the Commission's website. During this period, the teachers apply online via the TSC recruitment portal. Document verification exercise. Once the application period is over, the Commission invites the shortlisted teachers for verification of academic certificates and other relevant documents at the sub-county offices or school level. Then we have the decentralized interview process. Pursuant to Article 6.3 of the Constitution, and with an aim to improve service delivery to the grassroots level, Interviews are conducted at the sub-county or school level, enabling access and regional representation. This approach facilitates wider participation from the candidates across all counties and minimizes logistical and financial barriers for applicants from remote areas. Then we have standardized scoring criteria. A uniform interview scoring guide is applied across all regions. This standardization promotes consistency, fairness, and transparency, ensuring that candidates are evaluated solely on merit. Then there's a consideration of ASAL and hard-to-reach staff areas. To ensure that schools in ASAL and hard-to-staff areas are well-staffed with teachers, where an advertisement does not attract applicants due to lack of subject combination, consideration is given to the next available applicant. Then on gender parity and inclusion of social groups, teachers' recruitment deliberately take into account gender balance, persons with disability, and the inclusion of marginal. There's one on measures in place to ensure that teachers are absorbed while in their prime age in order to maximize on their long-term teacher expertise.
Was that by you?
Yes, by Bensouda.
Was it by Honorable Bensouda? Yes. Okay, because we are not going to cover the others of Honorable Owundo and Honorable Mengit because they're not present.
So I'm just doing the last one for Bensouda.
Okay, thank you.
On that question, as discussed above, the Commission recruits registered teachers in accordance with the recruitment guidelines issued from time to time. The available vacancies are advertised based on the demand for and supply of teachers as per the existing establishment and budgetary provisions. The second one is further, the recruitment process is guided by the principle of competition and merit, integrity, transparency and accountability, equity, fairness, impartiality, inclusiveness, and non-discrimination. In the spirit of equity and fairness, the Commission distributes recruitment vacancies equally among the 47 counties. The recruitment scorecard is developed in an inclusive manner to consider items such as professional qualifications, age, length of stay since qualification as a teacher, and CBC upgrade. The last one is to this end, the Commission ensures that it considers both teachers who graduated in the early years and have applied for recruitment and their counterparts who recently graduated. Honorable Speaker, I beg to submit. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Bensouda, would you like to respond to that?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to provide for response on the questions which I asked, which have been tackled by the Committee of Education. Honorable Speaker, allow me to submit my apologies for yesterday not having been in Parliament at the time that I was called because I went to attend an urgent matter, and I thought the matter was coming way far beyond that time. However, Honorable Speaker, I went through the response given by the Education Committee on my concerns regarding the recruitment of teachers, the policies existing, and ensuring that the teachers who are employed, they are employed at an age bracket that they are energetic enough to deliver the services that is expected by them. Honorable Speaker, I would like to note that a lot of theoretical framework which are relevant do exist. My worry is the practical implementation on what is theoretically documented by the Ministry of Education and the Teachers Service Commission. Honorable Speaker, I say that because practically when you do any impromptu visit into our schools, whether rural, secondary, JSS, and the like, we have serious shortage of the time of recruitment and the time that the schools lastly receive teachers in their school. Honorable Speaker, it is also a fact that there are some teachers delivering under BOG who have served in those institutions for more than 10 years. Honorable Speaker, the issue of gender balance on recruitment issues also, Lord, I want to say that in some cases it has been taken care of. The smart theoretical framework that we have, Honorable Speaker, if it is really followed, I think we'll be having mitigating measures on how teachers are recruited. I was informed by the age limit. I know of a teacher who comes from Karachuonyo, is almost retiring. It is a concern that has been in this house, the age limit that the teachers are recruited. I'm wondering at what point this teacher would be recruited. Having made several attempts, Honorable Speaker, to appear for interviews, makes application and the like. On that regard, Honorable Speaker, I would want to submit that I was fully not satisfied with how they have demystified the policy guideline on how recruitment reports are done and balancing. This informs even the proximity of schools between one school to the other, informs also lack of care of the population of the students vis-a-vis the ratio of teachers who are supposed to serve them. Honorable Speaker, I do request the committee to go back and review with the Teacher Service Commission and give supporting data of evidence on the last 10 years and the way forward that they have, so that we don't have problems of disparity, employment, and having retirees in one school being retired. After 1 year, another head teacher comes. 1 year retired, there is lack of continuity. I have evidence of this, and Honorable Speaker, we need supportive evidence, and Education Committee must go round and establish, particularly in the rural areas. Honorable Speaker, I submit.
Thank you. Before we proceed, allow me to recognize the presence of students who are seated in the Speaker's Gallery from the Kenya Medical Training College Karuri campus, from Kiambaa constituency, Kiambu County. On behalf of the substantive Speaker and the rest of the House, we welcome you to the presence of Parliament. Thank you. What's your point of order? Member for Kitutu Masaba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. First, I have two issues. The first one is I had sought for a statement of delayed remittance for SHA for a child, Agnes Nyanchoka, who was stuck in India for some days. Honorable Speaker, I have not gotten that response, despite me having been promised that response was to come within 1 week. This has led that the family had to go
Honorable
looking
Member,
for loans.
why don't we, I thought you were following up on the question of on the statement of Honorable Bensouda.
No, I
so
thought
why don't we
Bensouda
let
was
us
done.
finish that? I only let
right.
you on that before you can,
Okay.
can give an opportunity. Yes, Vice Chairperson?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We have noted the concerns of Bensouda on the shortcomings, on the response. But for her comfort, I wish to report here that the Education Committee has already requested for the data of all these schools, one, on all the teachers who are over 45 years. We want to see how many they are so that we can commit a budget in the next budget cycle, if it is possible. Two, TSC has also accepted, because we have discussed this matter, and anybody who is even 59 can be recruited. Doesn't mean that they will not be recruited. They will be recruited even at 59, and I know that it is not the right thing to do, but we are there and we have agreed that they recruit even if you're 58 or 59. For the rest of the data that you have requested, we have noted, and in the next meeting we should be able to communicate and bring you back to the committee for discussion. Thank you.
I think, Vice Chairperson, the concern that seems to come out clearly is that the cutoff recruitment age is 45. Many of them have approached 45. There is also the concern that there are people who graduated 2 years ago and have been recruited, and somebody who got their TSC number 15 years ago has not been recruited. I think that isn't that clear, Honorable Bensouda? So I think it's better that a specific question is asked on that particular issue. Okay, thank you.
Chair, Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Nyenze.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, but I'm not Nyense, I'm Susan Kiamba from Makueni. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I wish to also put my word in the statement that was brought by Bensouda and others and responded by the committee. While I appreciate a lot of input they are put forth, and they seem to have actually given it a real thinking and critical thinking in the answers they have given for all the questions, I really wish they would actually go back on an issue that, Speaker, you have highlighted. In my constituency, I have 10 women. I can give you their numbers and their TSC numbers, who are now above 48. And they have applied and even given me the number to push for them. And I pushed and I can't push any further. These are mothers who went for training. They have over 15 years trained and they have not been employed. I think the committee should be intentional. The committee should be intentional and ensure that, because teaching is a very specialized training. And when somebody misses the employment, it means that training goes to the West and this country actually loses on that particular person. I would urge the committee in collaboration with the TSC to be very clear. There is no need for a teacher to retire before he or she has worked. I think it's unfair to this country because that is an investment that this country has made on that particular individual. And I think it is very evident. You don't even need to go far. There are people who have graduated 2 years, 1 year, and they are already employed. That disparity is actually worrying. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, even when you look at regions, you realize some regions have a lot of teachers, while other regions do not have teachers. I think we need an analysis, Honorable Chair of the committee. We need analysis to show us where is the gap, so that when employment opportunities come, we can have affirmative action. There is no need of already sharing the newly recruited teachers as if in every country we are at the same level. We are not at the same level. I think this is a reality that the committee should take in consideration. It's important that we base the employment and distribution on already existing gaps. There are some schools where you find that in a primary school, the BOM, the PTA are paying for 4 teachers. They have only 2 or 3 employed by the TSC. That is completely unfair because, Honorable Speaker, these are also taxpayers of this particular country, and that's actually hidden marginalization. I think the committee needs to give us clear data based on every constituency to see actually where the disparity is, so that when we employ, we also have intentionally addressed the inequalities. Honorable Speaker, I looked at the marking scheme of the interviews. And I know that it is demand-driven, but if you look at the bias towards science subject, the social teachers are completely marginalized because that scheme already gives the other sectors 40 marks ahead of anybody. If you are given 40 marks ahead of the other people, of course you will actually fail. And unless as a government we develop a strategy of where else we are observing the social science teachers, then I think it's unfair to look like it is not our responsibility in this particular country to take care of the trained teachers. If the teachers cannot actually fit in school, then we should create other avenues where the teachers should be employed, and especially those who have done social sciences. 40 marks ahead is completely throwing them out of the market. And I think it's not fair for any country to do that because all those are our people. Honorable Speaker, I think also another thing to check is the issue of the promotion with the teachers. I think this is also having a very big gap. You realize, like in most areas, people are qualified, but they never get promoted. while in other areas you get the people promoted. I think we need to have a resemblance of equity in this particular country. Because I don't think in this country we have areas where people have not been educated. The issue of saying this area do not have people educated is a thing of the past. Even in Turkana now we have enough teachers to employ. I think it's important that the spirit of equality, equity actually prevails in the sector of education. Otherwise, thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And this is a sector we cannot ignore, Honorable Speaker. It is what we wake up every day. Every day we wake up on issues and education. And I hope the committee gives it the necessary focus. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Zamzam. Member for Mombasa.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze pia kuweza kumuunga mkono Mheshimiwa Bensouda kwa kuleta swala hili ndani ya bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni dhahiri walimu wengi ambao wamesomea na wamesha graduate, wamepata vibali vyao miaka mingi sana, wamekaa bila kupata kazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati wenzao wa nyuma, wadogo zao wamekuja nyuma na wamepata nafasi ya kufanya kazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, na Mheshimiwa Spika, sio nafasi ya kazi tu, hata wale ambao wako kazini. Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati mwingine unapata mwalimu amekaa miaka 14, miaka 15, miaka 18, hata promotion pia hajapewa. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo hali ya walimu katika taifa hili pia, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni ya kusikitisha kwa sababu hawapati ile haki sawa. Na ikiwa itatokea hata masala ya promotion, Mheshimiwa Spika, waangalie wale ambao wamefanya kazi yao vizuri na wamekaa muda mrefu, waweze pia wao kupewa promotion. Kama kuna mwalimu ambaye sasa ni deputy principal wa pale Shanzu Teachers College, amekaa miaka 15, Mheshimiwa Spika, yuko katika ile nafasi, wakati wenzake wanapewa promotion, yeye ameachwa pale na anafanya kazi nzuri. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nataka kusema hizi nafasi za kazi zikitokea ziwe zinaangaliwa wale ambao waliweza kugraduate mapema, kwa sababu mtu, hata kama nimesikia Mheshimiwa katika kamati hii ya ambayo inashughulika na mambo ya walimu ya education, anasema kuwa hata wakiwa miaka 56 ama 59 watapewa kazi. Tusiweze kusisitiza mambo kama hayo, tuweze kusukuma, kutoa msukumo kuwa wakati bado wako katika ile hali yao ambao ni active, waweze kupewa hizi nafasi za kazi na wao wapate matunda ya kuona kuwa masomo yao hayakuenda bure. Mheshimiwa Spika, na Mheshimiwa Spika, imekuwa ada katika taifa hili, na mimi niweze kusema hata kuna watu ambao wamepewa position katika sekta tofauti ambao pengine walikuwa ni political rejects na mambo kama haya, na kuna watu ambao ni professionals ambao wangeweza kupewa nafasi hizi wakafanya kazi nzuri. Sasa unapata wale ambao walianguka pengine kiti cha siasa, ameenda amewekwa sehemu, badala ya kufanya kazi vizuri, anakuwa sasa yeye ndo anaweka tumbo lake mbele, kwa sababu hata ile nafasi amepewa pengine si professional katika nafasi hiyo. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nasema ikiwa Kenya tunataka kuipeleka mbele sawa, tuwapatie wale ambao ni professionals katika sekta tofauti waweze kuongoza, ndio waweze kusaidia rais hata kupeleka Kenya mbele. Lakini kwa walimu nasisitiza walimu wapewe nafasi sawa. Ikiwa nafasi zinatokea, wale walio graduate mapema wapewe hizo nafasi mapema, wale ambao wanafuatia waje kwa nyuma. Mheshimiwa Spika, na ikitokea pia promotion, walimu waangaliwe, mtu ameserve ameimba na watoto darasani. Mheshimiwa Spika, amehakikisha mtoto ameshika kalamu paka amejua kuandika, amehakikisha mwanafunzi amepata masomo na amekuwa ni, hata unapata yule mwanafunzi ambaye alimsomesha ameenda amepata kazi kubwa mbele yake, lakini yule mwalimu bado yuko katika ile position ambayo mwanafunzi alimwacha hapo. Mheshimiwa Spika, inakuwa si haki kwa walimu, waweze kuangaliwa maslahi yao promotion ikitokea. Na si hao tu, hata polisi pia tunaona pia wengi pia wanalalamika. Mheshimiwa Spika, amekaa sehemu moja na hajapata hata ile promotion. Kwa hiyo mimi namsupport dadangu Bensouda kuwa walimu wapewe nafasi kufuatana na vile walivyo graduate kutoka katika masomo yao. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika. Hakuna order, we nyamaza. There is no order.
Thank you. That's a very interesting speech from the Honorable Zamzam. Yes, I want to come to my point of order. Honorable Speaker, you see, I want to say that there are no political rejects. And people who lose seats in Parliament are also professionals. Some of these people that lose seats here are professionals, Honorable Speaker. So if you say that they should not be given those positions, there are teachers here, there are engineers here, there are doctors here, and when they lose seats, they have an opportunity to serve the country in another capacity, Honorable Speaker, and therefore they cannot be political rejects, and they should not be denied an opportunity to be appointed in another position, including Honorable Zamzam. One day when you are not the women rep of Mombasa, the president will graciously say, you are good in social this, and we appoint you to this.
Honorable Owen, you have made your point. You're repeating yourself now. Let us proceed. Honorable Kibet Kimingoy, are you speaking on the same topic? Are you speaking on the same topic? No. Okay, then let's go to Honorable Marianne Kaitang, member for Aldai.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand to support the statement by Honorable Bensouda on the teacher disparity. And one thing, Honorable Speaker, is that Article 10 of the Constitution of Kenya talks about issues about human dignity, equity. It talks about social justice, inclusiveness, and equality, and all the issues with regards to human rights. And when you look at the teacher disparity and distribution across this country, the employment of these teachers, you find that that part of the Constitution is actually being, is not being adhered to by those who recruit and those who distribute these teachers across the various schools in this country. I'll give you an example, Honorable Speaker. In the schools in my constituency, especially in the escarpment, because of the very harsh terrain of those particular areas, you find that teachers are rarely posted in those schools, and you'll find even a school having only one TSC teacher against a population of about 300 students. And what parents are left to do is to dig into their pockets and pay BOM teachers to be able to get their learners so their children get education. That is being inequality, because the Kenya government pays for all teachers, and if my school, for example, that has one TSC teacher is being denied access to education and parents have to cough into their pockets, it means it's double jeopardy for these parents. They'll have been taxed, and at the same time they have to go into their pockets to get money to go and pay for teachers who will then teach these children. Again, these teachers who are being hired on BOM, we do not know whether they qualify to be teachers, because a board has sat and said this a child of this particular place fits to come and teach in that school, and yet the system of education says that for a teacher to be employed, they have to be a TSC employed. So one thing I support is that we need to relook at the TSC employment in this country, the teacher distribution, and I would wish to request the Committee on Education to actually provide to this House a list of all the teacher numbers in every school, student population in every school, because again, there is a policy on education that says that a teacher should be for every 40 learners. So if that is the case, in places where there is huge disparity, once the table is provided, then we can do fair distribution of these teachers. And number two, for those teachers who have not been employed and have and graduated in 2013, 2015, and all those years, they're about to retire before they get into employment. If that can also be considered, so that if there is any gap that needs to be filled, then those teachers who graduated much earlier be considered, so that they can be able to fill those gaps, and those schools that are in such places like my escarpment are able to get teachers, and the parents then don't have to go into their pockets. So I totally support the motion, the statement that has been brought by Honorable Bensouda, and we wish that the Committee on Education fast-tracks this process and be able to give us the data, because if you look at those data and those disparities, we'll find that this part of the Constitution, the Article 10, is actually being, is not being adhered to by the Ministry of Education and TSC more specifically, because when they hire teachers, they are not looking at those kind of disparities. And those disparities have gone to affect even human dignity and all the aspects, because these students will sit one major exam called KPSEA, they'll sit an exam called KCSE, and all those exams are uniform across the country. The school that has all TSC teachers vis-a-vis the school that has one TSC teacher, at the exam time, they will not be given a different exam saying, because you do not have this type of teachers, we do not get this type of education. And finally, when they get to employment, and when they get to the employment industry, you will find that these teachers who do not, these schools or students that do not have teachers, they do not get opportunities to work because they do not get proper education or good education compared to the schools that had good or the good number of teachers. So it is something that we need to all comply with the Constitution and give every part of this country equal distribution in terms of employment for teachers, in terms of distribution for those teachers who have been employed, so that all schools are equal. And we comply with our Constitution to ensure that no teacher is employed under BOM but under the TSC, because we all pay taxes, and all these taxes need to go into payment of salaries of these teachers, as opposed to parents going into their pockets to support education. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. I allowed quite a big amount of time because I know this is a very important matter that touches on every part of the country. But I think what has come out clearly is there's definitely need to have the minister come here to respond to those specific questions and to, get suggestions on looking at the policy. So now we'll move to the next. You already made your point of order. It's been noted. Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would like to bring to the attention of the House that we've come to the end of Q1 of this financial year. Honorable Speaker, we as members of Parliament will be walking a very tight rope if we do not start speaking now. Honorable Speaker, this Parliament has already passed for gazettement, approved for gazettement, members of CDFCs for various constituencies at a level of 99%. Honorable Speaker, as at today, the NGCDF board is yet to receive the disbursement for Q1 of this financial year. That is equivalent to 19.5 billion. Honorable Speaker, we run a risk of falling onto the trap that is being set. There is a court order that says NGCDF comes to an end 30th June 2026. If by Q1 there is no disbursement, and we know how the government has been disbursing, by Q2, the board will be in arrears of 39 billion. Honorable Speaker, if members of Parliament do not rise up and speak on behalf of the CDFCs to have this money received now so that we beat the deadline of the court order in completing all the projects before May.
Because you're raising it as a point of order and it seems to be a substantial point, why don't you raise it as a substantive statement?
Honorable Speaker,
this afternoon or tomorrow?
I think with the leader here, this is something he can pick up without even having, because it's a matter of concern for all 290 constituents, and all members will agree with me. So, Honorable Speaker, we need to get answers when Treasury will start disbursing these funds, because already they are behind by 19.5 billion, and in 6 days' time, they will be behind by 39 billion. Honorable
okay,
Speaker,
so we
thank
can
you.
tell Honorable Owen, maybe you can have a response in the afternoon.
Say this, Honorable Speaker. There are very important points being raised by Honorable Gesairo, and I think it is a concern to all of us because we have a court order, a deadline.
No, the question I'm asking, what we need, don't go over the points again.
Yes.
Simply, I'm requesting you or ruling that you get the answers.
Okay.
You can get in touch with the National Treasury and the board and then give a response in the afternoon.
Much obliged, Honorable Speaker. I'll get in touch with Treasury so that we get a response in the afternoon. I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable members, next order.
Order number 8, the National Police Service Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2025. First reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the National Police Service Act. Order number 9, motion. Formulation of a land use policy on zoning of land for agriculture and built development.
Mover of the motion, Member for Westlands, Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this time to move this motion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move the following motion, Madam Speaker, that aware that land is a critical but limited factor of protection that supports human habitation and food production. Noting that agriculture is Kenya's main economic mainstay, appreciating that the Central Bank of Kenya, CBK, Monetary Policy Committee Agriculture Sector Survey 2022 estimated the contribution of the agriculture sector to the country's gross domestic product, GDP, to be 22% directly and 27% indirectly through its linkages with other sectors. Further, appreciating that the survey showed that the sector employs over 40% of the Kenya's total population, concerned that in the Land Reform Volume 3 publication, the Kenya Land Alliance land estimated that only 17% of the country's land mass is classified as suitable for rain-fed agriculture land, while the remainder is either semi-arid or arid. Further, concerned that the country's agricultural productivity has been decreasing over the years, cognizant of the fact that the decline in agricultural productivity is partly attributable to the shrinking agricultural land use due to unplanned settlements and encroach on agricultural lands. Further, concerned that agricultural lands in rural areas are continually being subdivided into small portions for built development, thereby diminishing the size of the land available for agriculture. Noting that there is need to put in place measures for effective land use in the country in order to guarantee optimal use of agriculture. Now, therefore, this House resolved that the government, through the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing, Urban Development, puts in place a policy framework for effective land use in rural areas by consolidating and designating zones for built development, for commercial and residential developments with shared public utilities, and separate zones for agricultural use, in order to arrest further diminishing of agricultural land and steady the country's agricultural productivity. Madam Speaker, I beg to move. And Madam Speaker, this is informed by the way the country is progressing, Madam Speaker. We can see that areas that were mainly agricultural and most farms around, Madam Speaker, we've seen how they have been uprooting even coffee and other things, Madam Speaker, and then trying to build houses, Madam Speaker, for residential houses. Madam Speaker, I beg to move this motion that this House, Madam Speaker, sorry, this motion emphasizes the importance of sustainable land use in the environmental conservation as Article 69 of the Constitution of Kenya, which aligns with the objectives of this motion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I also want to say that lack of clear guidelines in to access land use, the use of land, Madam Speaker, are often recipe to conflict and violence. The motion seeks, Madam Speaker, to prevent land use conflict between agriculture and build-up development zoning land, so that, Madam Speaker, if this policy is put in place, there will be earmarked that the areas, Madam Speaker, that are designated for agriculture, and they'll never be disturbed, and they'll never be put to any other use other than agricultural use. Madam Speaker, allow me also to observe that there is urgent need to balance economic development with agricultural productivity and environmental sustainability while protecting the country's natural resources and reducing the risk of environmental degradation. Honorable Speaker, this policy stands also to protect agricultural land, thereby increasing productivity while contributing to food security. The land use, Madam Speaker, policy will therefore guarantee the entire population sustainable access to public spaces, public service, public institutions, and social amenities. Madam Speaker, this motion also calls for policy on collaboration between the relevant ministries, including, Madam Speaker, Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, Agriculture and Livestock Development to develop the policy, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this motion also loudly calls for engagement with the key stakeholders, including farmers, developers, and local communities to ensure that the policy reflects their needs and aspirations. Land use policy should recognize the resources that are limited. Hence, Madam Speaker, the need to have a long-term vision, but also to prioritize actions to respond to immediate challenges. Madam Speaker, the riparian land and wetlands support water resources to sustain the healthy ecological environment. A policy in place, Madam Speaker, will ensure that riparian land is well documented and mapped out. We have seen that, Madam Speaker, especially in Nairobi here, that riparian land has been encroached and people have haphazardly engaged into development by, Madam Speaker, building on the waterways. And we've seen that when the rains come down, Madam Speaker, have caused so much havoc in the city and places where people are staying, Madam Speaker, you find houses filled with water and people displaced. This is because of this haphazard development, Madam Speaker. Honorable Speaker, if this motion is passed, it will ensure the identification and designation areas for agricultural use, including, Madam Speaker, residential, commercial, and industrial uses, protecting prime land from encroachment, Madam Speaker. Because, Madam Speaker, if we look at, especially in the rural areas, Madam Speaker, the land is being subdivided into smaller units, Madam Speaker, whereby it becomes economically not viable. Because many times, Madam Speaker, I remember some time back in India, the Prime Minister then, Indira Gandhi, Madam Speaker, came up with the agrarian revolution because of the population of India, and they needed to have sufficient food security. She came up with a system of model towns, Madam Speaker, where they moved people from the farms, those small farms, Madam Speaker, to stay in a model town where the government had developed and gave way for the land to be used for agriculture, and some for irrigation, and some, Madam Speaker, which was used for agriculture. And it has secured food security in India. And India, Madam Speaker, can even now feed itself and even export some of the food. And it's not that India is more arable than Kenya, but because of the policy that the government came up with, and they secured the food security for the citizens of that country, Madam Speaker. And I believe we can do the same, because we have seen countries like Israel, which are virtually a desert, Madam Speaker, but they have made very good use of their land. They have used irrigation and many others, and have secured themselves, Madam Speaker, that they don't suffer from any food shortages, Madam Speaker. We've seen in this country, Madam Speaker, the areas that are rain-fed, agriculture rain-fed. Madam Speaker, the land is being diminished because of these small subdivisions and making the land uneconomical. Honorable Speaker, integrating climate change in the land use and development planning will help identify and map disaster-prone areas, thus promoting land use practices that enhance a climate resilience and reduce effective effects of climate change. A regulation on the same will ensure adequate financial resource allocation for implementation of climate change action plan and related activities. Madam, this is now the in thing across the world, Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, because of the climate change, the effect of the climate change, Madam Speaker, is affecting so many things. We've seen that there are reports that the weather patterns have changed, Madam Speaker. The rising of the levels of water in the seas and many other areas, Madam Speaker. And also, you see the weather pattern now that was predictable, now is no longer predictable. You just find sometimes delays in the rains, or rains comes at the time that is not expected and causes a lot of havoc. So when we align this and make this policy to climate change, Madam Speaker, we shall secure ourselves and protect our environment. Honorable Speaker, the enactment of this policy will ensure that the environmental factors such as conservation of natural habitat and water services in the land use planning are considered. Honorable Speaker, the policy will also ensure public participation in the land use planning process to reflect the needs of the farmers and people in the ecosystem. Madam Speaker, public participation is a constitutional requirement, and Madam Speaker, when these things affect the people, we need to bring, Madam Speaker, to involve people so that they can give their views in this formulation of the policy, so that it is applied across the board and that it will be acceptable with everyone, Madam Speaker, and people can embrace it, because when we are going to secure land for agricultural use, Madam Speaker, it will improve our food security and also provide security for our people. Madam Speaker, I beg to move, and also, Madam Speaker, request the Honorable Julius Sunguli to second. Madam Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Sunguli.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I am quite glad to second this important motion by our friend Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, because this motion, the purpose of this motion is actually to urge the government to put in place regulations, guidelines, and strategies to ensure the sustainable use of fertile land, especially that related to farming. Madam Speaker, I must begin by saying that in this country, there is actually no shortage of policy, especially policies that bear the title of land policies. There are quite a number that have been set up. The agricultural policy of 2021, the national land use policy, and many others that I could name. But the specific issue that the honorable member is raising here is about the use of land in Kenya in a manner that is not planned and in a manner that is becoming unsustainable in the long run. Because fertile land is being used as places to build houses. And Madam Speaker, unless that issue is addressed, land is going to diminish because we are one of those countries in the world where population is on the rise every day. And when population is rising, the demand for human habitat becomes important. And therefore, it becomes the responsibility of the government to make sure that in order to plan for future generations, we have to have land that is specifically zoned for agriculture and land that is prohibited for human habitat, and therefore to designate the kind of places where people can build their lands. This issue is actually more prominent in the rural areas. And those of us who represent rural constituencies know that places where there just used to be 5 elders now has very many children, and that land has been subdivided, and some of the young people have actually been allocated land very close to the river or quite in the middle of what used to be the farm, and that's where they have put their houses. And because of that, land has become very, very scarce. I come from a place which neighbors the Kisii area, and when we were growing up, an average person there owned about 10 acres. When he got 2 children, the land was divided into 5 acres each. And when those got children, the land was subdivided even further. Because of this, the land has been deteriorating. But what the government needs to do, Mr. Speaker, now, is to ensure that actually, apart from the policy that we set up, we look into the legal framework of our land use. One, there is now the one land law called the Land Act. But the title deed that we have there is one that gives you what you call absolute proprietorship. And I can see the honorable member from Murwadikir is not listening yet, is yet a new lawyer who needs to listen to older lawyers. The title deed that we produce in Kenya is called absolute proprietorship. It therefore gives you absolute power over your land with very, very few restrictions. And unless we temper this absolute proprietorship to make it possible for government to intervene on how you may not use your land, it's going to be a terrible thing because people are going to do to their land whatever they are going to do with it, and they will not care whether the nation is going to produce food or whether future generations are going to use this land. And apart from just subdivision, there is another enemy of the use of land that is going to make food even less and less sustainable. In the constituency, for instance, that I come from, we have been actually net producers of food. We produce maize, we produce milk, we produce beans, but now there is a new rush to cash crop. And now everybody is growing sugarcane. A few years ago, the GTZ, which was a German company, a German NGO, mapped out the use of land in Transmara and said that this particular piece of land is good for animals. This particular piece of land is good for growing maize. This particular piece of land is good for this and that. Had we followed this blueprint that was placed by the GTZ, we would now be going ahead and producing food much better even than Kitale. But unfortunately, totally unguided, we have now rushed into the temptations of South Nyanza and other places and produce sugarcane, even in areas which are not sugarcane areas. The government must make a policy that will make sure that land is used for its purpose. Because whether we like it or not, if we try to force land to do what it cannot do, we will eventually collapse what it is already doing and collapse its future use. I think it is important that we go there, because you may forgive Kiambu for uprooting the coffee and placing real estate on their land. And that might be beneficial for people like us in the Rift Valley who are now embracing coffee. But if you do not get enough land on which will take over the responsibilities that used to be borne by Kiambu, we are no longer going to be proud as Kenya for being a coffee growing area. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to urge that the government makes a more serious policy backed by regulations, backed by legislation the policy that is going to make sure that the use of land is sustainable for production of food, is sustainable to maintain generations that we have now and generations that will come after us. Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Thank you. Order, honorable members, I propose the motion that aware that land is a critical but limited factor of production that supports human habitation and food production, noting that agriculture is Kenya's main economic mainstay, appreciating that the Central Bank of Kenya Monetary Policy Committee Agriculture Sector Survey 2022 estimated the contribution of the agriculture sector to the country's gross GDP to be 22% directly and 27% directly through its linkages and other sectors. Further, appreciating that the survey showed that the sector employs over 40% of the Kenya's total population, concerned that in the Land Reform Volume 3 publication, the Kenya Land Alliance land estimated that only 70% of country's land mass is classified as suitable for rain-fed agricultural land, while the remainder is either semi-arid or arid. Further concerned that the country's agricultural productivity has been decreasing over the years. Cognizant of the fact that the decline in agricultural productivity is partly attributable to the shrinking agricultural land due to unplanned settlements that encroach on agricultural lands. Further concerned that agricultural lands, Further concerned that agricultural lands in rural areas are continually being subdivided into small portions for build development, thereby diminishing the size of the land available for agriculture, noting that there is need to put in place measures for effective land use in the country and in order to guarantee optimal use of agriculture. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development, puts in place a policy framework for effective land use in rural areas by consolidating and designating zones for built development for commercial and residential developments with shared public utilities and separate zones for agricultural use in order to arrest further diminishing of agricultural land and steady the country's agricultural productivity. Before I give the first member to contribute on this, join me welcoming students from Faro School, Embakasi Central, Nairobi County. They are seated in the Speaker's Gallery and are welcome to our proceedings this morning. Thank you. The Honorable Zamzam, I can't see Zamzam there. The Honorable Andrew Kwome. And before you contribute, the Honorable KJ, I can't see your card, so you have to put a card in there if you want to contribute. Honorable Kwame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me start by saying that land is a very, very important tool of everything within our country. The only unfortunate thing is that it is limited. What we have is what we must use. And in order that we maximize benefit of use of land, we must do what is necessary for maximization. Mr. Speaker, ever since we knew Kenya as an agricultural country, but we don't seem to be maintaining that philosophy of Kenya being an agricultural country, because our productivity, as the motion says, is declining. It is important we wake up before it is too late and maximize the use of the land that we have. If I start with agriculture, Mr. Speaker, I must say that we have not taken agriculture as a very, very important as a very important as something very important for us to work on. Yet agriculture is responsible for our food, and it is responsible for various other cash earning. If we use our land properly for agriculture, we would be able to have food and also export our agricultural products. That will help our economy at a very high level, and I really appeal that we use all possible methods of improving agriculture. Even training of agriculturalists has gone down. Universities are not training enough number of agriculturists and extension officers, so that the trained staff could go out and help the ordinary people, telling them what to do and how to use their land in order that we can do our maximum. My colleagues have mentioned, and I agree, that sometimes you find a fertile land being used for building houses. And the dry land, if there is any dry area, maybe rocky and whatever, which would have been very useful for building the houses. That kind of piece of land is left lying idle, and people rush for an area which can be used for agriculture. So in zoning that we are, that is in the motion, we could guide people on how they can live, leaving the fertile land for agriculture, and a land which is not very fertile can be used for these other purposes like building houses. Mr. Speaker, I also want to say that on the commercial side, we need to have maybe our shopping centers built in areas which are not extremely productive agriculturally. We can be maximizing the use of our agriculture if we leave, like I said before, fertile land for agriculture and dry land for building these other purposes. If we use our land carefully, it will also help us to give necessary facilities to those who are living in a collective area where you have call it a small residential place. people can be building their houses there so that if you bring water, the water will cover many people instead of, like I see in our area particularly, people building their homes scattered all over, making it very difficult for the government to give them necessary facilities. I support the idea that zoning of how we can be able to use our land is very important, and we must do it. It is only unfortunate that this kind of statement is coming late when people have already built beautiful houses out there on land that ought to have been spared for agriculture. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Thank you. The Honorable Sarah Korere.
Shukrani Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, ningependa pia kuongeza sauti yangu katika kuchangia hoja hii ya kutaka pahala maalum kutengwa ili kuweza kuzalisha chakula katika nchi hii na pia pahala maalum pa majengo. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, sio pahala pa kuzalisha chakula kwa kilimo peke yake, manake pia ufugaji, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni kiinua uchumi muhimu sana katika nchi hii. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, hivi masiku za karibu tumeona kule kugawanya ardhi vipande vidogo ambaye haitaweza zalisha chakula hata kidogo. Kwetu sisi wafugaji ina hatari kubwa sana kwamba hivi karibuni tutashindwa kufuga, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na ni wazi kabisa na tunajua kwamba katika nchi hii Wakenya wanapenda sana nyama choma. Mheshimiwa Spika, nyama choma inapatikana tu kwa mifugo ng'ombe, mbuzi, ngamia, kondoo na kadhalika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, pahala kama vile Laikipia kukigawanywa vipande vya ardhi kwota ekari, Mheshimiwa Spika, ufugaji tunaweka katika hatari kwa siku za nyusoni. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, inataka kabisa turudi kutathmini sheria za ardhi, manake ilivyo sasa ni baadhi ya majimbo machache sana ambaye bado imebaki na ardhi ya umma. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nitasema tu kwa sababu lazima niseme. Baadhi ya majimbo hayo, ile ardhi ya umma ambaye imebaki katika mikono ya magavana na wengine ambaye tunajua kwamba ardhi imekuwa devolved. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, imekuwa ni kwamba ni kama kuwekea mbuzi fisi wakawachunga. Manake hiyo ardhi imeliwa na wale mabwana. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukitembea jimbo la Laikipia, ni aibu kwamba kuna watu bado wanaitwa maskwota. Watu ambaye wameishi huko kwa miaka na mikaka, karne tangu jadi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, wakati ardhi ya umma inatwaliwa, unapata wameenda kubeba watu kutoka jimbo jirani kuja kuwapa ardhi wakiitwa wahisani sijui waekezaji, na jina wekezaji ama kwa kimombo investors imekuwa ni jina ya kuiba ardhi ya umma. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Spika, aliyewasilisha hoja hii ni hoja muhimu sana, na nafikiri hatujachelewa sana. Inataka tudhathmini tena sheria za ardhi, manake tusipofanya hivyo, ardhi ni mojawapo ya sehemu muhimu sana ambayo hata inalete vita vya jamii kwa jamii, kwa sababu ya wale ambaye hawana ardhi kuona kwa kijisho wale ambayo wamekuja kunyakua ardhi yao. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa, naunga hoja hii mkono na nampongeza aliyewasilisha.
Asante. Mheshimiwa John Kiarie.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I also want to congratulate my neighbor, the Honorable Timothy Wanyonyi, for bringing such a thought-provoking motion to this House. And Mr. Speaker, if there is anything important that we are going to discuss this morning, it must be Honorable Tim Wanyonyi's motion. The Honorable Tim Wanyonyi hails from a constituency called Westlands, neighboring Dagoretti South. The Westlands that we know today traditionally was part of the larger Dagoretti. And that Dagoretti belonged to a district called Kiambu. So that if you go to Honorable Tim Wanyonyi's constituency, you will find that the freehold lands that are in Westlands carry titles that are labeled Kiambu District. Kiambu District was traditionally an agricultural